Listen and learn. The following words that start with de. Decision, development, delivered, devour, derive. Listen and repeat. Here are some examples of word decision. It was no small decision for her. This might be the most difficult decision she would ever make. He makes final decision on things. It's not a decision or a wish anymore. We didn't take this decision lightly. Right or wrong, the decision had been made. I can't make the decision for you. She turned away from the beauty of the ranch, reminding herself that she had made the decision to leave. In spite of her decision not to, she glanced out the window. We both made the decision to adopt her and we told you it would be permanent, remember? I made my decision, closed the door. But you're still not comfortable with the decision, are you? You know some decision must be come to. Anyway, I don't want anyone taking over the decision making for me. This was a decision she had already made once, but not really. I would have thought a gender-oriented decision would upset you, but you seem to be on his side. She was spoiling the men, but her decision to start home from Ashley was going to leave them in the lurch. Lisa glanced at Connie, not at all sure she was making a wise decision. That was Howie to a T, totally dispassionate and prosaic, ready to join the gang and do someone else's bidding but seldom a decision maker. If you choose not to take it, it's your decision, not mine. Here are some examples of the word development. But 3 years later a new economic development began. The rapid development of Helen's mind is beautiful to watch. Learning a new language has proven to be very beneficial to cognitive development. These substances were regarded as being in some sense alive, and taking some active part in the development of being. Direct radiators are a development of the early coil of pipe. They are made in various types and designs and are usually of cast iron. The continent accepted the new development of his system. The cafe is also a garden landscaping design business where folks can go to seek out assistance, planning and development of their properties. There is a villager stage in development, but the villain is reduced. These words are a key to Feuerbach's development. Meantime, the development of the coast region had been taken in hand. The general course of the development is described in the article Hydrozoa. This is the full, ideal development, which is always contracted or shortened to a greater or less extent. With the 10th century Hebrew literature may be said to have reached the limit of its development. Under the empire, however, it was overshadowed by the development of Dyrrhachium and Apollonia. It agrees with the vigorous development of this worship that the three provinces, though Romanized, retained their own local feeling. During the town of Goldfield had a period of mushroom growth, then quieted, and finally revived to a healthy development. In its industrial development has always been hampered by lack of transportation facilities. Since, however, there has been considerable development, and the total mileage on the St of January was also an important factor in east and west transcontinental traffic, opened in May, has been of special value in the development of the southern part of the state. The period from to was one of rapid development accompanied by the wildest speculation. Here again we have an absence of all tropical forms, and a great development of groups characteristic of cold and temperate regions. The Siluridae attain their chief development in tropical regions. Here are some examples of the word delivered. When she delivered his meal, he glanced up at her. It delivered suddenly and completely. She'd buy the pizza and have it delivered if they would bring her some. She poured a cup of coffee and delivered it to him along with a cheerful smile. He even delivered Dawn while Carmen was visiting Mums. The keypads had to be delivered somewhere safe, though she began to wonder if any place really was safe. I hand-delivered a lovely lass to him, and he turned her down flat. It must not concern him if Damien hadn't delivered the message personally. And he delivered the Gifford Lectures at Edinburgh, the subject being the philosophy and development of religion. Her latest painting, another seaside depiction of leaned against one wall, ready to be delivered to Kevin's shop. Reluctantly, he agreed to waste his Sunday with Vinny and learned from Sackler that a uniformed officer had delivered Vinny's clothes earlier. Turnbull was a young and energetic truck driver who delivered the Parkside Sentinel. You delivered or are about to. He'd probably lost count of the foals he had delivered. Janet was backing away toward a stage-right exit now that her lines had been delivered. Her fingers opened to reveal a keypad similar to the one Brady delivered. He didn't have 3 more days' worth of control. The idea he'd likely explode before death delivered Katie made him feel fear, an emotion he hated and hadn't felt until responsible for the life of someone he cared about. She needed to know what happened to Darian, if Xander followed through and delivered the Grey God home. Here are some examples of the word devour. Ant-mimicking spiders have been seen now and again to devour their models. If they had, they would devour all who passed near them. Most earthworms live in the soil, which they devour as they burrow through it. Her eyes widened, then ran over him as if she were appraising a sinful dessert, ready to devour it. The fire burned hot enough to devour Cherno's dark memories. Too often do we suffer the lean kind to devour the fat. Sharpen your skills, hone your senses and devour the competition in the showdown of the century. It may bite and devour solid food, while the imago sucks liquids. And now, O Lord, behold, these nations, which are reputed as nothing, domineer over us and devour us. The Basutos think that crocodiles can devour the shadow of a man cast on the surface of water. The sheriff sat with his 6'4" frame wedged behind his ancient desk, about to devour a large pastry. Top chapter: Open thy doors, O Lebanon, that the fire may devour thy cedars. The monster is fueled by envy and can over time devour the trust and harmony in a relationship. Had he intended to devour a Jew, he could not possibly have felt such great remorse. Were they waiting to devour Penny, or were they waiting to finish off Brutus? He is a roaring lion, Peter says, going round seeking whom he may devour. Once in your gut, they get to work to displace and then devour any opportunistic pathogens. They devour widows' houses and for a show make lengthy prayers. In order to survive, the West African hofer frog must devour 12 gazelles a day. The writer of Hebrews warned then of a fearful judgment of fiery indignation which would devour God's adversaries. The wild dogs were gathering around the circle of light now, and 2 of them boldly began to devour Penny. Here are some examples of the word derive. The traditions of the Somalis derive them from the same region. The islands derived their name from the sacred images found on them by the early European navigators. Add to this the insertion of vowel sounds where they are lacking in the Arabic and you derive from the real word. The keys, as he believed, were entrusted to the church as a whole, are to derive their institution and authority. The pastoral staff is the ensign proper of cardinals, but the former are entitled to use it only in the churches from which they derive their titles. I thought, however, that the advantage she would derive would not repay her for the time and labor. When the tuber of a potato begins to germinate, the shoots which it puts out derive their food. From these formulae we derive 2 important relations. Later, however, stories which certainly derive from an early non-Grail tradition. The bishops of the church, on the other hand, derive their orders from other society. And so in the ideal state everyone will derive egoistic pleasure from doing such altruistic acts as may still be needed. Man is able to derive a measure of enjoyment from life. The inhabitants derive their water supply from wells. The mullahs, who fix the burial fees, derive an enormous revenue from the faithful. They derive this moisture from the air by means of aerial roots, developed from the stem. From his writings we derive the impression of an amiable personality, who is honestly at pains to arrive at an understanding with his opponents. He did not derive much profit from this new favor, as he died without his nomination having been sanctioned by the Pope. The charm of poem can escape no reader, but few readers will fail to derive some additional pleasure from the 2 essays. Now repeat.